Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and in this episode, we're taking a break from our normal frivolities to explore something a little darker. It's Halloween, the time of year when shadows stretch a little longer, and the line between what we see and what we imagine starts to blur. As photographers, our entire craft depends upon our vision, on how we interpret light, color, and the world around us. But what happens when that vision changes? When the world you've always seen through your lens starts to twist and come alive in ways that you can't explain? This episode's story is about a New York City photographer who believes he's finally found his true artistic vision, a revelation of color and light that will redefine his career, and maybe reality itself. But as his obsession grows, he discovers that sometimes seeing more than everyone else comes with a terrible price. So dim the lights, put your headphones on, and open your mind's eye, if you dare. This is Creative Vision. Part 1. Colors in his eyes. New York City was always a blur of motion and light. But lately, Nathan was seeing it differently. Colors didn't just exist anymore. They pulsed. They were sentient. Neon signs bled into one another in a slow, rhythmic wave, and streetlights haloed like living things. He'd been a photographer for 15 years, surviving in the Big Apple by taking corporate gigs while always chasing that elusive, unique, artistic voice. Now he finally felt that he'd found it. The world in his mind shimmered with prismatic fractals as though reality itself had dropped its guard and shown itself to him. He was obsessed. Never in his life had he felt such razor-sharp certainty about his artistic choices. There was always some internal, nagging voice scratching at his brain, seeding doubt and despair. That's not good enough. No one is going to like that. Recently, it had felt like all of that negative self-talk had literally been shut off, like someone had flipped a switch. Nathan began to talk about it with the fervor of a prophet. How our eyes don't really see the world, they just interpret electrochemical signals. How perhaps no two people ever fully, truly perceive the same color. Maybe, he said loudly to a group of his gathered artist friends as they sat on the living room floor of his fifth-floor walk-up, the red that I see isn't your red. Well, maybe I've finally found my red. Their response had been to laugh and tell him to lay off the tequila. They didn't understand. Not yet. But they would. He filled his studio walls with prints that looked like visual hallucinations, using prisms and filters to create streaks of color that seemed to move even when still. His eyes stung and burned every morning and night, red and swollen. He attributed it to his allergies, lots of leaf mold in the air this time of year, or maybe just too much time spent staring at computer screens editing photos. This, he told himself, was the price of discovery. Sorting through the prints on his table, he called his friend Maya. They'd gone to college together, and while he'd gone the starving artist route, at least until he sold his soul to corporate America, she had steadily worked her way up the art gallery ladder and was now a highly sought-after curator. "You have to see this new series I'm working on," he said. "It's going to change everything." Part 2. Lack of focus. A few weeks later, Nathan sat in the waiting room of an ophthalmologist's office, nervously tapping his feet up and down as he waited for his name to be called. When the pain in his eyes got worse, he couldn't laugh it off anymore. This was his livelihood he was dealing with, his calling. Vision problems? What could possibly be worse for a photographer? Nobody hires a blind photographer, do they? His corporate clients had started to complain. Too many soft shots, one said. Are you experimenting with blur? Another had joked. He had checked the images himself and was horrified to find that for each gig he had delivered dozens of out-of-focus images. Dozens. He blamed exhaustion, his itchy, painful eyes. Maybe it was his monitor, but deep down, something felt off. He hadn't even noticed how bad the photos were. Even looking at them on his computer screen, he couldn't quite make out that they were soft. He was only able to truly see it when he ran them through some AI software that flagged all of the out-of-focus images. He quickly thought back through the jobs he'd done before he noticed the pain in his eyes. There was the fundraising event at the Natural History Museum where they unveiled that new meteorite, the environmental portraits he'd done at Columbia University Research Lab, the branding photos for the Lady Mystic who talked about the power of crystals the whole time. She was a strange one. But he'd still taken the mojo bag she offered him that she said would bring abundance. No hurt in trying. All those jobs had come out sharp. No complaints there. The nurse called his name. Once he was in the exam room, Nathan tried to explain everything to the doctor. The crust on his eyelids in the mornings, the feeling of grit, how his eyes burned when he woke up and by the end of every day. He'd tried warm compresses, eye drops. Maybe it's those eyelash mites, he said, forcing a laugh. I saw an ad about them. As the doctor shone a light into his pupils, the world exploded into color again. Fractal bursts of orange, blue, and pink spiraling outward like a kaleidoscope made of neurons. It got him thinking about his new artistic path. He'd become so obsessed that he nearly put off seeing a doctor about his vision. He couldn't believe it, and that wasn't the only thing that he found hard to swallow these days. Maya's words echoed in his head from her recent visit. I just don't see what you're seeing, Nathan. He wanted to shout that no one could, not yet, that he was seeing deeper, truer. The doctor's voice cut through everything. I'm going to remove that. Nathan blinked. Remove what? The doctor's expression didn't change. There's something in your eyes, like a foreign object, small, almost translucent, like fish scales. Do you do any fishing? Not that I'm aware of, Nathan quipped back, unable to withhold his sarcasm. Had all of this been caused by some airborne fish scales that had found their way into his eyes? How could that happen? It's New York City, Nathan. What isn't flying through the air here, he thought, reminding himself that sometimes the drops you feel from air conditioning units overhead aren't actually drops from an air conditioning unit. Look up and hold still, the doctor replied coolly. A tool gleamed in the light, a couple of brief tugs, a stinging sensation, and the doctor dropped something wet and glimmering like mother of pearl into a petri dish. I'll have these tested, the doctor said. Might explain your symptoms. How's your vision now? Nathan stared at the swirling afterimage in his vision, colors folding in on themselves. It's all just light, he whispered. We just think we know what we're seeing. Part 3. The Pulsing Dark. Nathan woke in darkness. Or maybe he was still dreaming. How could he be sure he was awake? The pain behind his eyes pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, like molten glass pushing outward somehow. He didn't want to open them, but he realized he already had. The room was dark. He couldn't remember if he'd drawn the curtains. The light had been hurting his eyes. Plus it was the fall and it started getting dark early these days. The room was black, but he could see dim outlines of his hands, glowing faintly like heat signatures. It had been a week since the doctor's visit. For a few days, the swelling subsided, the colors dimmed slightly. Then 2 nights ago, or was it longer, the burning pain returned with a vengeance. He fumbled for his phone, wondering if his doctor had called back about setting up an appointment. He couldn't find it and decided to use voice commands to play his messages. The first was a robocall asking him to confirm his online business listing. He swore he'd still be getting those calls when he was dead. The second was Maya. Nathan, this isn't funny anymore. Those new images you sent, they're all black. Every one of them. I don't know what you're doing, but please stop. Black? Impossible. He knew what he'd seen, what he had made, the pulsing color, the radiant light that seemed to fracture reality itself. He told the phone to dial the doctor's office. A receptionist answered, saying the doctor was out for personal reasons. If he couldn't wait through the weekend to see someone, he should go to the ER. Nathan swallowed hard. The weekend? What do you mean? What day is it? It's Friday afternoon, 1:30. We're about to take our lunch break, so let me know if you want an appointment for Monday. Friday? He tried to remember when he'd gone to sleep. Had it been Monday? Tuesday? The burning sensation and pain had definitely returned that Friday night after he had gone to the movies. And why was it so dark at 1:30 in the afternoon? It's not like he had blackout curtains. His eyes throbbed again. He reached up to rub them and froze. Nathan's fingertips met something hard. A thick, crusted shell sealed over his eyes, yet somehow he could see through it. Light bled from his fingers, tendrils of phosphorescence stretching outward like spider silk. The voice on the phone was asking if he was still there. He barely heard it as it faded into the background. The surface over his eyes began to move. Tiny filaments rippled under the crust, like a colony rearranging itself. The crust cracked, and from the fissure came a shimmer as if made of crystal dust. But it was moving, crawling. He could feel it now. Not glass, not dust. Alive. As he brushed his fingers across his face, the crust broke apart and thousands of tiny, glittering creatures poured forth, swarming across his skin, into his ears, his nose, his mouth. He thought of his own words. Vision is just a series of signals interpreted by the brain. And now he understood. Something else was sending the signals. The voice on the phone kept asking if he was okay. Then everything went black. And for the first time in his life, Nathan truly saw. Thank you for listening to Creative Vision, an original horror story by me, Casey Fatchett. If you'd like to listen to more Halloween photography-related content, feel free to check our back archives from previous Octobers. There's lots and lots of material. And be sure to follow along with us on the social medias at The Nerdy Photo on most of the major social media platforms. That's at The Nerdy Photo. Music for this episode provided by Moby. That's right, Moby. Be sure to tune in for our next episode, and until next time, stay safe and stay nerdy.